alalele lokuvediwe eParliament uma kwendluliswa lesishukumiso bekunene la ngesikhathi iParliament ithi awusalumiswa lomthetho lona bekunene sithi kasichaze siveni ukuthi kushaya kwemithetho eveni kushaywa ngekuthi uhulumende noma ke i-executive ibambisana nayo iParliament bekunene uhambe ke ugcine umthetho sowuvele ushayiwe sowuqala usebenta bekunene sibika ke ukuthi lihhovisi landvunankulu nelihhovisi la Speaker Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs na Attorney General nayo ikomiti ye-Sessional Committee endlini yabaye esikhulu ibe seyahlangana kutolungisa lokhu bekunene lokubonakala ungathi sekudunga umhlaba sithanda ke ukuqhaza bekunene ukuthi sisehlangene sivumelene ukuthi siwatise umhlaba sicacise ekuthenini iParliament umsebenzi wayo vele ngiwo ukuthi ishaye yona imithetho yelive lefanele bekunene kodwa ke indlu noma ke baya esikhulu ude emandla kumisa umthetho lo sovele ushayiwe bekunene indlu baya esikhulu la khona kukwenda kumisa ema-bills la suka khona ku-executive lesuka khona kuhulumende kodwa itelendlu emandla ekumisa umthetho lo sewuvele usebenta bekunene ngaleso sizathu ke satisa wona umhlaba ukuthi lo mthetho waphokha bekunene solo uyaqhubeka ngalokufanele bekunene kuze ke ukuthi umthetho ushayo ngalokuphelele bekunene sithi nje sicondzise satise naso sive ukuthi kumele uhambe igaba letintathu sigaba sekuqala nguye indlu baye esikhulu House of Assembly bese kuba ke indlu yetimphunga iSenate bese ke seyigcina ke ibusiswe imbube yemhlaba head of state ingwenyama nase umthetho kuhambe tonke letigaba leti bekunene usuke sowuvele uphelele sowuqala usebenta bekunene uma ngabe ke kukhona lokhona eveni noma ke ngisiphi isigaba uma ngabe loyo mthetho akhanza ukuthi awukamphathi kahle noma awusebenzi kahle unelungelo leliphelele lokuthi ayothola lusido etinkantolo bekunene siphindze ke satise nesive ukuthi live la kaNgwane liyingcenye yamhlabuhlangene la khona la sayina khona divumelwano letitsite letilibopha ku live la kaNgwane bekunene letinye tato tiphathelene nabo buqala nekuganga lesikubita ngekuthi corruption bekunene lo mthetho ke lo waphokha uphokelela lona live la kaNgwane ukuthi ulandzele lemigomo yamhlabuhlangene kunemithetho nje noma ke imigomo lemithathu imithetho lemithathu lekhona lesilandzelako usilive la kaNgwane ngawona lo mthetho lona lokho ke kubitwa ngokuthi ma conventions bekunene lavele ashaywa kamhlabuhlangene la gathe kona ukuthi emave onke la ingcenye yamhlabuhlangene abonakale akuvikela alwa nebuqala ngaso sonke sigaba sithi ke uhulumende utawuqhubeka akhulumisane nayo iParliament ngoba kuloko lokuvelako kuyabonakala ukuthi iPhalamende iveta kona kukhala kwesive sitawuqhubeka sikhulumisane nabo kukubukeka konke lokhu letikhalo bekunene ngoba uhulumende nePhalamende usebentela sona sive konke lesikwendako noma tinhlelo tahulumende noma iPhalamende imithetho leyishayako eyishayela sona lesive ukuthi kube nenhlala kahle bekunene eMaswati aphile ngendlela lefanele konke lokhu sithi nasikwenda nemithetho ishaywa eveni ishaywe ibukele kona ukuthi ithuthukise eMaswati nekuthi ke live ilimisa kahle emhlabeni live la kangwane libonakala lihlonipha netivumelwano live lelangena kudo ikakhulu nje tidlelwane tivumelwane letifana naleti takamhlaba uhlangene uhulumende ke uya kuthabela bekunene lokuvetwa kuvelile endlini yabayisikhulu kokuthi kubuketwe imithetho lethite ikakhulu lena bekunene lebonakala ukuthi ayisawasebentele eMaswati sitawusebenzisana nayo iPhalamende naye bayesikhulu kukulungisa konke lokhu bekunene siphinze ke sendlulise kona kubonga lokukhulu umsebenzi lo ondiwa iPhalamende yelive bekunene kusekela intuthuko eveni nekuthuthukisa nje live la kangwane siyethemba ukuthi lemithetho leshaywa ePhalamende eMaswati atawuqhubeka ayilalele ayihloniphe ngalokuphelele bekunene ngoba seyishaywe live semithetho yelive lekumele ukuthi siyihloniphe bekunene iPhalamende inalo lungelo leliphelele lokuthi uma umthetho sewubonakala ukuthi sohanjelwe isikhathi noma mhlambe so kwenda into letithite le iPhalamende icabanga ukuthi atiwalungele eMaswati inalo iPhalamende lilungelo leliphelele kuthi lo mthetho iwulungise noma ngendlela lefanele bese uyamiswa loyo mthetho ulandzela tonke letigaba bekunene lesitibalile ekuqaleni kwekugcina ke sithandza nekugcizelela bekunene ukuthi umthetho ubhekekile ukuthi ulandzelwe noma ngubani noma ukusiphi isigaba bekunene sithi ke kule live laseSwatini leliphethwe bukhosi bekunene sibhekile ukuthi lonke leSwati liulandzele umthetho nekwekuthi sathi letigaba letintsathu bekunene ukuthi kunahulumende kunePhalamende bese kuba netinkantolo kumqoka ke ukuthi sisakwenda konke lokhu sikwende silandzela wona umthetho sisekelo welive lovele uqhaza kabanti lokuthi imithetho yelive iphasiswa njani igcine ke seyisebenta bekunene sithi ke umthetho vele utawuthatha indzawo kuwo wonke umuntu bekunene sive sitawati ukuthi imbube yemhlaba uma ivula iPhalamende lonyaka ivele yamthuma uhulumende yalithuma live ukuthi alihambe lilwe nenkohlakalo inkohlakalo ngetigaba tonke kungasho ukuthi inkohlakalo lendiwa ngilomncane noma ngilendiwa ngilomdzala lo mthetho nje waphokha bekunene usebenta kuwo wonke umuntu noma unjingile noma uphuyile noma ukusiphi isigaba bekunene kubhekeke ukuthi sonke siulandzele umthetho welive losevele ushaywe ngito tonke tigaba letifanele kungako ke sigcizelela esiveni uhulumende ngeke vele utawuqhubeka alwe nayo ingohlakalo ngetigaba letahlukahlukene bekunene kuze kuthi live la kangwane litothuthuka likhule liphindze futhi libe nesithundi lihlonipheke nasemhlabeni wonke latiwa ukuthi live lelide ingohlakalo bekunene siyabonga House of Assembly, which sought to suspend the Prevention of Organized Crime Act, POCA, thus planting seeds of confusion in the nation. May I take this opportunity to make the following clarification. The Executive has noted with concern the sentiments of members of Parliament with regards to POCA. Legislative process is a shared enterprise between the Executive and Parliament. To that extent, it became necessary for the offices of the Prime Minister, Speaker, Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, Attorney General and House of Assembly Sessional Committee to meet and forge a way forward. It is important to state, and the parties accept, that Parliament's constitutional mandate excludes the suspension of any legislation that has been passed into an act. Parliament can only reject or amend a bill and not suspend an act. As such, any resolution purportedly suspending POCA is ineffective. For any law to be effectively amended, it has to go through 3 stages: the House of Assembly, the House of Senate, and His Majesty the King as head of state. An aggrieved party should follow the court process to challenge the legality of any law. The Kingdom of Eswatini is a signatory to the UN Charter and therefore has signed a number of agreements and conventions to fight corruption and organized crime. The POCA enables the Kingdom to comply with many international obligations, which include the United Nations Convention Against Illicit Traffic in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances, 1988 Vienna Convention. Article 5 calls upon state parties to put measures in order to provide for the confiscation of proceeds and instrumentalities of drugs and related criminal activity. The United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime, signed in the year 2000. Article 12 of the Convention calls upon state parties to the Convention to act or to enact legislation for the retrieval and confiscation of proceeds of crime. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption 2004, signed by the Kingdom on the 15th of September 2012, which calls upon state parties to fight corruption using asset forfeiture. The Executive will continue to engage with Parliament in addressing the concerns, their validity and otherwise, that the legislation impact negatively to the average citizen whilst balancing compliance with the international conventions in which the country is a signatory. Government accepts and supports that the law must be applied equally to all citizens, and all law enforcement agencies should ensure this is the case. We appreciate the work and efforts of the current Parliament in supporting national development. We do expect laws passed in Parliament to be in line with the national development agenda to ensure that the country's machinery grinds in harmony to uplift the standards of living for all Emaswati. Finally, I would like to emphasize that the rule of law is fundamental in our monarchical democracy, underpinned by the doctrine of the separation of powers. The rule of law implies that every person is subject to law, including people who are lawmakers. Government remains committed to upholding the rule of law and to the fight against corruption and crime in general. We will not flinch or hesitate to rid this country of the scourge of corruption and crime without exception as we accelerate our economic renewal strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. From the Prime Minister's statement, Prime Minister can take a question or two. Any questions? One thing.